Hello and welcome to day 8 of my 365-day programming journey. We're going to be looking at buttons in Unity again. This time we're going to be looking at juicy buttons. What are juicy buttons? It just means that it's buttons that are fun to interact with and they feel really good to click. Our sources for today is this one article from answers.unity.com about a bug fix I was having trying to find the size of an image. But other than that, there's no other sources, so let's get right into it. Here we have our button, and if we go ahead and hit play, we can check it out. And look at it go. It's very responsive and bouncy, and it feels really good to use. Don't take that out of context. So let's get out of play mode here and look at the code. First thing you'll notice is all these pointer handlers, but we'll get to those a little bit later. First, let's look at the variables. We have this button graphics rect transform, which is used for some calculations later. Move speed for how quick the button reacts. Offset for how far the button will react. Shadow graphics rect transform for the shadow, and use shadow for if we're actually even going to bother with it. We have all our Unity events here for click, hover, exit, and release. And down here we have our private variables for different positions, what our current target is, and size, which is used exclusively for the shadow. We also have is hovering just to see if the cursor is over the button or not. So let's see what the button does when the game is started. So we set up our positions, which runs through this function here to first check if the button graphics is null. And if it is, we're going to try to automatically find it using this custom tag here. And if it's still null, we're going to have to return out and throw an error because there's nothing we can do. If not, we can go ahead and set the home position, and then we can run this get position function for the hover and the click position, which just takes our offset and uses this modifier to determine if it's trying to go towards or away from the home position. Now going back to our start function, if we have use shadow checked as true, we're going to go ahead and try and set up our shadow. If the shadow is null, we're going to go ahead and create a new game object, add a rect transform and an image component, set the parent to this transform, set the assembly index to 0 so it's always behind the graphics, and set the local scale to 1 because often it tries to set it to 0.05 or something like that. And we're going to name it shadow just for easier tracking in the hierarchy. Now that we know we have a shadow, we're going to go ahead and set the color to black, set the sprite to the button image, and set the image type to the same as the button image type so that the proportions are correct. So if it's a sliced image, we have a sliced shadow. And then we're going to set the shadow size. And finally, we're going to set the shadow anchor position to the click position so that it's behind and down from the home position of the button. So now let's see how it determines where it's supposed to go and how it gets there. If we open this fixed update function, we can see that it's checking if it's at the target, and if it's not, it's lerping towards it. But how do we get our target? That's where our pointer handlers come into play. So if we open onPointerEnter, for example, we can see that it's setting the target to the hover position, and its setting is hovering to true. And of course it's invoking its onHover event. OnPointerExit is very similar, except it's doing the opposite, setting the target to home position and setting its hovering to false, and of course running its onExit event. OnPointerClick is a little special in that it only invokes if the pointer is still over the object. OnPointerUp will invoke if the pointer was over the object and the pointer was released, but it doesn't matter if it's still over the object or not. And now with all that, we can go back to the editor, we can make as many buttons as we want, we can resize them how we want, and thanks to the automation of the script, they'll work exactly as intended at runtime. So now if we click play, we can see everything's working correctly and they all look and function great. One super important point is that on the main button object, there needs to be an image that has 0 transparency, or 100% transparency rather, and it needs to be slightly bigger than the graphic button and where the button will go. This is because the pointer handlers are actually targeting whatever images it can find on that object, including children objects. So you gotta have this overlapping object, otherwise you'll get in a situation where it can try and target the graphics and it will move the graphic and it'll think there's nothing there, so it'll try to run the onExit function and it'll just end up in an endless loop. And I think that wraps it up for day 8. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to stay updated, like to help grow the channel, and leave suggestions in the comments below. I'll see you tomorrow.